Hello, everyone. On behalf of the Center for Urban Language Teaching and Research at Georgia State University, I welcome you to the 6th Annual World Languages Week. CULTR, as the center is known, is one of 16 federally funded Title VI language resource centers in the United States. CULTR has created a unique identity around serving the needs of all students and the communities they represent by helping to promote language learning opportunities as part of 21st century global education. Guided by its core values of access, advocacy, outreach, and research, CULTR has gained a national reputation for innovative approaches to promoting access to language education for all students, regardless of their socioeconomic and ethnic background. I'm Diana Wren-Rapp, the Assistant Director of the Atlanta Global Studies Center, and I'd like to thank you for being here with us today for the FLAS Fellowship panel, which I will be moderating. Before introducing the panelists, I'd like to address a couple of housekeeping and technical questions. First, I'd like to remind everyone that all panels this week are being recorded and will be available after the event. All attendees will remain muted throughout the entire session. If for some reason your connection is interrupted during the panel discussion, simply rejoin with the same link that you used previously. If the event reaches its capacity, attendees may tune in via live stream on YouTube. Our panel discussion of approximately 35 to 40 minutes will be followed by a Q&A with you, the attendees. You may submit questions throughout the discussion and after in the Q&A box by clicking the icon at the bottom of your screen. If you like the questions you see, click the thumbs up icon to move the question to the top of the list. This panel session will conclude at 3 o'clock. And now I'd like to say a few words about the FLAS Fellowship, and then I'll introduce our panelists. The Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowship, also known as FLAS, is a nationally recognized fellowship funded by the U.S. Department of Education, International and Foreign Language Education Office. Georgia State University administers this fellowship through the Atlanta Global Studies Center, a Title VI National Resource Center on Global Studies, and a consortium between Georgia Tech and Georgia State University. The Atlanta Global Studies Center has funded over 20 FLAS Fellows at Georgia State University from 2019 until now. Our fellows have been both undergraduate and graduate students. Some have studied abroad and others have studied here at home. Since the primary goal of the fellowship is to advance studies in less commonly taught languages, FLAS Fellows must demonstrate a strong commitment to learning a foreign language at the intermediate or advanced level. Our fellows have studied Russian, Arabic, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and French. So now let's move to our panelists and do some introductions. First, I'd like to introduce you to Ashley Aguilar. She's a current student at Georgia State University. Her major is International Economics and Modern Languages with a focus in Chinese language and literature. She has experience working and living in China teaching English. Next, Maliha Khan is currently in her 3rd year of university, majoring in political science with a minor in Korean language and culture. She has held 2 positions as student assistants at Georgia State University. Fergus King is currently a business student at Georgia State University. He is double majoring in business economics and actuarial science. Next, we have Diana Osharoon. She is a French MA graduate student with experience in international education, digital storytelling, administrative services, and foreign language education. All right, panelists, are you ready?
Sure.
All right. My first question is, I just would like for you to have a chance to tell us about your academic journey. So tell us, I've already introduced you a little bit, about your major and what year you are, but maybe tell us what language you're studying and how long you've been studying that language and how it fits into your academic program. Fergus, can we start with you?
Sure. So I'm studying Japanese. This would, I think, be my third year studying it. Second year under the fellowship itself. I So my majors, business economics and actuarial science, have nothing to do with foreign languages or global studies or anything like that. But a lot of big business stuff, any kind of office job, when you give them your resume, if they see a foreign language, they think, wow, this is unique and something that'll put them above others. So even if your program doesn't use foreign language, it's a useful thing to have for a career as well as just for seeing the world and things like that. I initially started learning French during my associate degree, but I switched to Japanese when I came to Georgia State because it wasn't offered at my old school. And then during my time with the fellowship, I studied abroad in Japan for 4 or 5 months. I was there and I had a great time with it.
Thank you, Fergus. Yeah. So Fergus is studying Japanese. Diana, let's go to you next.
Yeah, so I am studying the French master's degree, and I actually started learning French a very long time ago in middle school. So I kind of kept learning it throughout high school, and in college, I was a minor in French and got a certificate in it. So I was an English major, but during that time, I had the chance to study abroad in France, and I was there for about a month, but after that, I knew that I wanted to for sure incorporate French into whatever career I would have in the future. So I kind of just sought out opportunities to go back to France for a longer period of time. And then when I graduated, I actually moved to France for a little bit to teach English in the south of France. And when I came back, I decided to start the master's program.
What a great experience. Thank you, Diana. All right, Ashley, let's go to you next.
Yes, awesome. Thank you for the introduction, Diana. And I would like to start off by saying that I'm actually a transfer student from New York University in Shanghai, China. So I did my first 2 years of undergraduate in Shanghai, China. And then I transferred to GSU. And since I'm still passionate about learning Mandarin Chinese, I decided that I would find a major related to, or that at least included Chinese. So that's why I'm studying international economics and modern languages, so Chinese on the side. But my first, I guess, taste of studying a foreign language, specifically Chinese, was back in high school. I applied to 2 study abroad programs, which I encourage any high school student at this event to apply. One of them is free. I'm sure you've heard about it. It's the NISLEAP Y program, the National Security Language Initiatives for Youth, and OWN, One World Now. So definitely apply for them. You get scholarships to go study abroad, live with a family. And these 2 programs allowed me to get, my first taste abroad. And I think I wouldn't have even thought or considered studying abroad had it not been that I was introduced to these programs. And it kind of put me on track to study Chinese and to live in China.
What a great experience for you, Ashley. Yep, we're glad to have you. And Maliha, tell us about your language learning experiences.
Hi everyone. So I've been studying Korean for about 3 years in college. I started studying for a couple of months right before I graduated. My initial goal, like career goal, was to be a diplomat, and obviously languages help with that. But now I'm thinking more about doing global media, global marketing, which languages also help a lot with that. And then also this semester, this academic year, I was supposed to be studying abroad in Seoul, South Korea at Hanyang University. But of course, with the current global situation, I'm not able to, but I'm looking forward to going once everything is calmed down.
Yeah, and we will talk about that a little bit later about sort of the flexibility that some of these FLAS fellows have had to have to adjust their plans because of the pandemic. So we'll get to that a little bit later. My next question is more about the FLAS Fellowship. So I'd like to ask why you decided to apply for the FLAS Fellowship. And besides financial support, what did you hope to gain from it? And Diana, this time I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so I actually decided to apply to the FLAS because it seemed like a great opportunity to just kind of connect with a community of, globally minded professionals and other students. So besides the financial support, I thought it would be a great supportive environment and opportunity to just better prepare myself for a global career.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, it is because of the fellowship requirements. The students need to study both language and global and area studies. So it's a really good opportunity to learn about an area or region of the world. All right, Maliha, let's go to you next. Why did you decide to apply for the FLAS Fellowship?
So yeah, obviously finances was a big part for me because I was looking to study abroad, but also like Diana said, I was looking to meet a lot of people who also really pride themselves on learning foreign languages. Because I think when you take language classes, you're only like exposed to people who want to learn that language, and I was looking to meet people who want to learn other languages like Chinese or Spanish or French.
Wonderful, thank you. And Fergus, how about you?
I really wanted to learn Japanese and to take classes that are similar to global studies, such as sociologies and anthropologies. But since I was already a double major, I was already on a slow track and it was going to take forever to graduate. Having a fellowship, having something competitive on my resume and getting a stipend for it kind of justified slowing down more and taking the classes I wanted to take. If with the fellowship, it was more reasonable, I could convince my advisors, hey, this is also really good for me, so that people wouldn't worry and I could learn everything I wanted to learn.
So a follow-up question for you, Fergus. Were you able to find global courses in your major?
In my major, there might have been some economic ones, but by the time I had the fellowship, I had done most of my economic major and not much of the actuarial science one. And actuarial science, for anyone who doesn't know, is big math, a lot of statistics, nothing that really I can use any global studies stuff for. So if I had done it earlier, instead of in my second or third year of college, I think I could have found some overlap.
Great, thank you, Fergus. And Ashley, can you tell us about your reasons for applying for the FLAS Fellowship?
Sure. Personally, I just wanted to continue studying abroad and living abroad. And I found out about the FLAS Fellowship, but also I remember attending one of the information sessions, and I found out that we would be required to take a global perspective course or just a global area course. And I thought this is exactly what I want to do because I want to incorporate, learning about a culture or just different parts of the world, but I also want to put that into my economics major. And so I think that was a huge motivator for me to apply.
Wonderful, thank you, Ashley. My next question is more focused on language learning. So obviously each of you were selected to become to be a FLAS Fellow, which I hope you feel is an honor and that you have been able to sort of represent your area of the world and the language that you're studying. But I wonder how the fellowship has kind of changed the way you think about language learning. So let's start with Maliha this time.
So when I started studying Korean, I think it was more for fun. Like I really liked the culture and like pop culture especially. So I was excited to learn about the language. But after taking the class and like doing the assignments, the class itself focuses a lot on career competency and like being global, like a good global citizen. And I think that through this class, I've learned more that language isn't just like a fun thing to do, like a hobby. It can be something that can really set you apart when you're applying to jobs and can also like enhance your global understanding.
Great, I'm glad to hear you say that, Maliha. How about you, Ashley?
Yes, I absolutely agree with Maliha. I'd also like to add that when applying when searching for fall and summer, fall and spring language courses, I was having some trouble there because I've already reached an advanced level of Mandarin at GSU. And so I didn't know where to go from there. I knew I wanted to continue studying Mandarin, but I was kind of stuck. And then Diana shared with me about, well, she informed me about cross-registering. So that means you can go to another university. Well, yes, well, right now online, but you can basically take another course at another university. And so I'm currently at Georgia Tech taking a Chinese science fiction class. And so I think it's definitely allowed me to explore more in the area of Mandarin and Chinese literature. So I think that's something that isn't offered at GSU. And it's also kind of a different structure of learning because it's not necessarily your basic grammar, your text, your like one paragraph like reading. It's more of just like delving into the literature of Chinese and seeing like the nuances of the language. So I think it's been very beneficial and awesome.
That's wonderful. So yes, you can study language at a more advanced level and get into some of the content specific applications of the language. Okay, Diana, let's go to you next.
Yeah, so for me, I think I've always valued language as a tool for connection, and I've always loved the French language, but I do think that the FLAS has broadened my knowledge on potential career options and just ways to incorporate the language I'm studying and my other interests. Because I think, a lot of times when you tell someone that you're studying a language, the immediate response is, oh, so you want to be a teacher or a translator. And there are so many more options. And I think for a long time, I was kind of maybe limiting myself a little bit to the options I had. But I think that the assignments that we're doing through FLAS and just kind of the career readiness component has shown me all the different options I have and how I can merge my passions together and use language as a tool in anything else I would like to do.
Yeah, so language is a very highly desired skill in the workplace in international global contexts. So I'm glad to hear that you've been exploring other careers. And for all of you out in the audience, if you are studying a language, that doesn't mean you have to become a language teacher necessarily. There are lots of interesting and rewarding jobs out there. Okay, and Fergus, how has the FLAS Fellowship changed your perspectives on language learning?
So before the fellowship, I first and foremost wanted to learn Japanese because I thought it would be fun and I really wanted to see the country. But for its use, I thought I'll learn this language so that I can do business in it and work with these people. And since taking a lot of global studies classes where things like that are relevant, I realized it's very certain that English is the language of business in the world. Even if I speak perfectly fluent Japanese, I would probably end up speaking English to anyone I worked with overseas unless I lived in Japan while I did it. What I really showed me was just how much it matters to attempt to use their culture or their language talking to them. Like if I did something in Brazil, just being able to say bom dia, good day, just attempting that makes whoever you're talking to a lot more friendly, a lot more willing to help, a lot more on your side, as opposed to just a big, mean American coming and doing something in their country. Doing the little things, even if you don't know the culture or language well enough, making an attempt means a lot to other people when you're in their countries.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, Fergus, that learning language also opens up your cultural awareness. So even if you're not just studying, you're not only studying grammar and vocabulary, but you're learning a whole new culture. So I'm going to go on, you've touched on this already, but about the academic requirements of the fellowship. So some of the students out there in the audience might be interested in applying for this fellowship and they want to know what the requirements are. So Ashley, could I start with you on this question? What are the academic requirements of this fellowship?
Sure. So I'll start off with we have to take 3 required courses as part of this fellowship. And so the first one I would say is language, any language course, either I believe it's intermediate or advanced level, you have to be in one of those. And then we have to take a global areas course, and this varies per person because it depends on what your major is and if it can be incorporated in your degree, first of all. So I think Diana has sent us a list of courses, and you're free to look through that list and choose which one fits into your major, which one you can get credit for. And I think so that's great. For me, I'm currently taking international trade and Chinese through cuisine. So either one of these, they count for this global area course. So it's very flexible, I would say. And then the other course, the last one, was the directed global area studies course. And this is the one that we meet about 2 or 3 times throughout the semester. And we just kind of discuss what we've learned so far and just talk about what skills we plan to acquire or what we already have, what we can work on. So yeah, I think these are the basic 3.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. And does anyone else have anything to add to that about the academic requirements? Okay.
Hi, sorry. So there's the instructor evaluation. So for foreign language, in order to see what level you're at and to make sure that throughout the scholarship you like improve and you grow, you have to get an instructor to evaluate you. And I think this is something you can like use to your advantage, because by telling your instructor that you want them to evaluate you, they'll see like your passion for learning foreign language. So if there's any like research opportunities or job opportunities related to that language, they'll reach out to you most likely because they know you're passionate about the language.
Excellent point. Yes, and you get to build a relationship with your language instructor that way as well. Yeah, anybody else have anything to add?
As someone who has a major completely unrelated to language, the 3 recommendation letters was a hurdle for me, because when I go talk to my Japanese language professor, of course, she's willing to do it. It makes perfect sense. But then I need 2 more, and I have to ask like a managing people business person to do it. And when I ask them about it, they're like, why me? Isn't there anyone better for this? And I have to tell them I only have professors that don't kind of make sense for this. So it's worked out. I've gotten letters every time. It's just, you might need to try a little harder, talk to your professors more so that they know what's going on and don't think, why are you sending me this? Am I the one that helps or anything like that?
Yes, and what Fergus is talking about in the application process, in the past, we've required 3 recommendation letters. If any of you are interested in applying, and I hope many of you will, we have reduced that requirement. So there is, all of the applicants must submit 1 letter of recommendation from a language instructor, but you have an option to submit 2 more if you would like. So it kind of helps students out a little bit and reduces that pressure to get those 3 recommendation letters. So we hope more people will apply and not have to go through that hurdle. So I want to move to you again, Fergus. You're the only one on this panel who had the opportunity to study abroad using the FLAS Fellowship. Unfortunately, some students had to change their plans because of COVID. So last year, I guess it was spring 2019, that Fergus was able to study in Japan. So I want you to tell us, how was that program, your language program in Japan? How is it different from a typical study abroad program?
Well, I've not been on a typical study abroad, so this is conjecture. But the program that I was in is at Sophia University in Tokyo, which in Japan, it's pretty well considered the most foreign-friendly university. So I had all of the classes I needed available in English, except for my language course, which was nice. There were like tours and trips set up to go to big museums and other things, and that was nice. The biggest thing that I cared about with the particular program was they would set up a homestay, and I stayed with a very nice old lady who cooked great food, and a sibling who was also in my Japanese classes. And because of that, instead of hanging out with, they, all the time while I was there, the program loved to talk about what they called the Gaijin ghetto, which is basically all the white people that came to study Japanese just kind of hang out with each other and they don't actually learn things. And that's what I wanted to avoid and what the program helped with. Because then I would live with my homestay, I would take the trains to the school, hang out around the neighborhood with all actual Japanese people and not other American students. And that was great. I could meet all kinds of people and learn. I don't know too much what was different with the program from a normal study abroad.
Okay, thanks, Fergus. Yeah, I think living with a host family is very helpful and helps you to have an immersive language experience, right? Which is what the FLAS Fellowship requires. If you are going to study abroad during the summer, you would have to take 120 to 140 hours of language instruction, which is basically the equivalent of one whole year of language instruction at the university. So Diana and Ashley, I know that you have both lived abroad. Could you tell us and share some advice for students who are looking for an immersive language experience and what that might be like? Or any study abroad experience. If it's not an immersive language experience, that's okay.
Yeah, so when I was in undergrad, I studied in France in a little city called Tours. And I think my experience was pretty immersive because I also stayed with a host family. So I got to speak with them, have conversation in French and practice my language skills over dinner. And they would cook authentic French meals. And yeah, I think the most important thing about an immersive experience is really experiencing the country and not gravitating towards other Americans, like Fergus mentioned, because I think it's so easy to, see people who speak English and you're kind of tempted to just slip into the pattern of, speaking English all the time. But yeah, it's just important to remember what you're there for and just trying to maybe join, volunteer at a local organization, depending on how long you're there for, and just trying to look for opportunities to speak the language as much as possible.
Those are all really great suggestions. Thank you, Diana. And Ashley, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. And then we're going to turn to after Ashley answers this question, we're going to give some time to the attendants to ask their questions. Ashley, you had to change your study abroad plans because of COVID. So could you tell us what that experience was like and how you made your decision?
Sure. Well, yes, overall, I would say that my study abroad plan has been successful as it can get while we adjust to these new learning methods. But I would also describe it as a roller coaster ride with, all the ups and downs. I think, the most disappointing part of the study abroad or like my study abroad plan was that I wasn't able to study abroad in Taiwan or China, wherever, or Korea also. But I did have quite a lot of options going on. I was able to take a domestic program or attend a domestic summer program through the University of Rhode Island, and it was amazing. Since I transferred, I left China. I was out of the environment where everyone spoke Chinese, and I was in Atlanta with only a few native speakers around me. So that kind of impacted my language abilities quite a lot. And so attending that summer program this past summer really helped me go back to an advanced level or the proficiency level that I wanted to be at. And so I think it was amazing. And I was able to experience a whole new, I guess, format or structure of language learning. And since the University of Rhode Island is a flagship program, so I think they specialize with, they offer an abundance of Chinese language courses. I thought it was a great resource. And also, Yeah, and I also had to change my plan for the fall this current semester because all of the GSU programs were pushed back or canceled. So I had to start looking into my other options. What could I do? How can I continue having this experience? How can I utilize this fellowship and continue learning? So that's when I decided to cross-register. So I think there have been a lot of changes, and so it's been it's been a little bit difficult, but I think it kind of all boils down to like the options that align with my language study and graduation plan. So even though I wanted to continue studying abroad, it might have pushed back my graduation, or it would have been a little bit more difficult. So it just kind of depends on every person, and for me, it just kind of worked out this way, and I'm glad it did.
Yes, I'm sure it was disappointing at first, but I was very pleased that you decided to continue your language studies. And so I hope this example shows that no matter what, the FLAS Fellowship program tries to support its students and help them make decisions and advise them along the way and give them different options. So none of us could have expected this pandemic, but we tried to encourage our students to continue their language studies, and I can say that I'm proud of all of you for all the work that you've been putting in and your dedication to language learning. So I want to take a moment to turn our attention to the audience questions. I know there was one about study abroad and how do you convince your parents to study abroad? And especially if you can, try to focus this on learning a language when you study abroad. Let's see. Maliha, can we start with you on this one?
Yeah, so I think I typed the answer in the chat, but I think for me at least, the most important thing would be to secure funding as much as possible, because I had that worry too when I was applying, because I knew my parents weren't going to pay for it. So if you can get as much funding as possible, you'll be able to take care of yourself, and they won't have to worry about you running out of money or just anything like that.
So money was my first problem as well, but this fellowship was a big part of solving that. The next thing was, since my parents are not the most worldly people, my mom kept panicking about, wasn't there a nuclear meltdown there? Are you going to go and come back with a third arm? A lot of kind of offensive things about how dangerous it would be to be in Japan. And I had to keep reassuring her nothing would happen. There's a lot of safe people. Look at these studies for how the waste has gone down and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, what we wound up doing is my mom got me a personal Geiger counter you can use on your phone. And I promised her I will turn it on as soon as the plane lands. And if it goes off, I will fly back. And then she let me go. So a lot of reassurance, talk to them, maybe try to talk to them with a professor or someone who has been to the other country to assure them that it is safe to be there. Because if not money, safety is what my parents would have cared about.
Good advice. Good advice. And yeah, to talk to other people who have lived in that country can probably ease their minds a little bit. Diana, do you have any other advice?
Yeah, I mean, I would pretty much say the same things that Maliha and Fergus said. I think my mom was pretty encouraging since I've traveled with her in the past. But I mean, going somewhere by yourself is different than traveling with a parent. So just kind of doing a lot of reassuring, giving them as much information as possible about the program and, people to contact, like the study abroad office if they have any questions, and just maybe having someone else, like one of the program directors, just talking to them and just reassuring them a little bit more.
That's a good point. I do think a lot of study abroad programs have advisors that are willing to talk to parents and family members who might have concerns about traveling. And I think that's probably even going to be more the case, after we return to travel again. Does anyone have any other advice to add?
I would just say, as if you're a high school student right now and you're not graduating anytime soon, but there are plenty of, well, I know there are a few high school study abroad programs that are fully funded, like I mentioned, Nisli Y. And I definitely encourage everyone to apply because it is fully funded and you live with a host family, you learn the language. It's very immersive for a high school program. So I think it's a great opportunity to, kind of make sure that finances aren't a burden. So I think that's great. Or you could also do what I did and didn't tell my mom, but I applied anyway and told her after I got the scholarship. I was like, hey, it's free. Can I go now? So it just depends. But yes, everything everyone else has mentioned is definitely, I would say, something to consider.
Wonderful, great advice from all of you. I'm going to go to this question. It's kind of a fun one. This is from Brittany Turner, who asks, what's your favorite word in your target language? So we'll just do a little bit of fun language sharing. And we'll start with, let's start with Ashley. Let's hear your favorite word.
My favorite word would be in Mandarin is 别提了. It means don't even mention it. But when you say it, it means you're going to start talking about what you don't want to talk about and you kind of go on this huge rant. And some people might think it like if you told someone in English, oh, don't mention it, you'll just drop it. But in Chinese, if you're like 别提了, every week you start ranting and it's just a great way to just, I guess, chat with your friends. It's just something I've learned over the time that I was there in Shanghai.
That's great. 别了tia. No, I said it wrong.
别提了.
别提了.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Maliha, how about you? How about in Korean?
Yeah, so my favorite is kanjang, which is this one dish in Korea. It's like soy sauce marinated crab, and like I really want to try it. And whenever I would go to my classes, my Korean classes, I would ask my professors would ask, oh, what like food do you like? And I would always say kanjang, and they would laugh because like it's such a random food, and you can't really get it in America. You have to go to Korea to get it, and when I would talk to my Korean friends, I would always mispronounce it and say kanjang, which is soy sauce egg, and they would laugh. So it's like a cute memory for me.
I love that. Pronunciation is important, isn't it? Fergus, how about in Japanese?
Probably wakarimasen, just because if you are not in like the third year of language, I'm going to say very often, I have no idea what you're saying. And wakarimasen is I do not know. It was useful.
Yeah, it's good to be just admit when you don't know something, right? When you're learning a language. And Diana, how about you in French?
I think mine isn't really a word, but I think in a lot of, I guess at least in America, when we hear people mimicking French, something they always say is "ooh la la." And I always thought that was funny because when I actually went to France, I didn't, know that people actually said that. So it was just funny to hear the different ways people used it or just the different variations of it. So I would say that's my favorite French expression.
I love it. Thank you. Let's see. I see another question about if you were nervous about leaving home and going to another state or country. Who wants to take this question? Were any of you nervous about traveling abroad?
I was very thankful. I don't think I'm the correct person to answer this. I didn't.
So you were very thankful.
Yeah, I was ready to leave.
Okay.
I would say yes, because I chose China out of all the countries. And like, I come from a Mexican family. And so just studying abroad just never kind of was in my parents' or my mom's, like, I guess, plan for me, like academic wise. And when I told her, hey, I want to go to China to study Chinese, it was very nerve-wracking just saying that to her and going to the country since we didn't know anything about China. It was just a random, like, I just randomly applied. So I think it's very nerve-wracking not knowing much about the country, but I think I would also say not to believe everything you read about, because it's not always true. And until you go to the country and experience and have like build relationships with the locals, and you learn you know, just kind of the traditions of a specific place, I think that's what really makes up your experience. And you can really talk about that when you start talking about your experience in another country. So I'm gonna say, don't be too worried, be excited, be adventurous and curious. I think that's so much more important. You're gonna completely forget about how nervous you were at the beginning once you get that experience, once you're out there.
Thank you, Ashley. Yes, it's normal to be nervous, but I think, yeah, hopefully you can turn those nerves into excitement and just go and enjoy your journey and your adventure. I'm going to move on to another question. This one is about jobs and resumes. Do you happen to know what are the top 3 most popular languages for jobs these days in the job market? I don't know if we have any data to show that, but maybe you could talk about what jobs you are looking at or what you have discovered, what jobs are available for people who are proficient in your target language.
I have some good advice for the question, but I don't know if it's quite that. Yeah, from professors and managers that I've talked to, having a language is not likely to affect how much they pay you for the job if the language isn't like specifically used in it. But it does make you more likely to be hired and more likely to be promoted, because it sets you apart from the other applicants, and then it shows your employer that you are flexible, you are capable of doing different things, and capable of movement. So having a language is good for getting jobs and for moving up, but it doesn't actually affect your pay. And the question also asks what the top 3 languages. I don't know what the top 3 languages are, but I do know that employers are going to see the common languages that we teach in America, which are French, Spanish, and then maybe German. So if you choose a language that's not one of those, I think you'd have a better chance of setting yourself apart or finding like a niche for you that not a lot of people qualify for. So it's something that could help you. I would recommend, if you don't already have a language chosen, because I think choosing the language is an important start. But if you know you want to be abroad and don't have a language, I recommend avoid French or Spanish. And then for the sake of that, this fellowship is very useful for finding languages that are not the standard ones.
Can I add something? Or okay. So I wanted to pursue diplomacy. So when I went to, I think I met a diplomat at an event, and he said the most for like diplomacy, they really want people who speak Russian and speak Arabic. I think we have one Russian last fellow, but we don't have any Arabic. So definitely if you want to do diplomacy, check out those languages.
Good advice. Good advice. Ashley or Diana, do you have any other career advice for students who are studying languages?
I would maybe just say, even if there's not a specific job that directly says you need a language, I think you can also be creative and just think about the different ways that you can use a language that you're studying in another thing that you like to do. Maybe you like writing or something. How can you use this language in a writing career, for example? So I think that language can always kind of be used as a tool in whatever you're doing.
I agree. Ashley?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how it affects necessarily the pay, but definitely I think just looking for jobs that, if you want to continue using the language that you're learning, I would say looking for jobs that require that language as much as, or that you can use it as often as possible. Like something that I'm looking into is becoming a certified legal interpreter for Mandarin, and I'm currently actually phone banking. And I use Mandarin in my job, so I'm able to speak with locals or native speakers in Chinese. I think just looking into as many opportunities to use a language it would be great, especially like in your career.
Yes, thank you. You all have very good points. And I would just like to add that no matter what career or language you're studying, there's always, a market for students with or for graduates with specialized language skills. So I think that's something that you can certainly explore and find companies that would value any language that you're studying. If you have proficiency in that language, you're going to be a really valuable candidate to them. I want to go back to the chat and go back to study abroad a bit. I think a lot of students are considering studying abroad, and maybe they need to know some preparations, things that they need to do before studying abroad, how they can prepare for studying abroad, how they can prepare for life living in another country, and how to find a good study abroad program. Let's go to Fergus. Can we start with you?
So things to prepare. Just a big part of preparation is to try to learn things about the culture beforehand. What could you do that is offensive? What are things that would get you like stares while you're there or something like that? For instance, in Japan, there's a trash can by every vending machine, and it is expected you do not eat while you walk. You eat whatever you've got at the vending machine there and throw it away there so that there's less trash. And if you walk around with food, people will stare or think this foreign idiot doesn't know anything or something like that. Just trying to find tips about the culture could help you when you're moving around at first.
I think that's great advice. Just do a little bit of research about the culture before you embark. Any other advice?
I would say learning basic phrases that you can use, daily phrases that you can use in the country that you're going to study abroad. I remember doing like maybe a month prior to my departure, I just did learn like how can I ask for food, or like where's the bathroom, or just greetings. These simple phrases, they definitely seem like once you use them with a native speaker, they can tell how much effort you've put in, and they're always happy to help you out like with your pronunciation or whatnot. So I think, yeah, just preparing beforehand is something I think is a must before studying abroad. And also just like cultural, like Fergus mentioned, any cultural, customs, like in China, you should probably, like in China, public restrooms don't have toilet paper, so you have to carry toilet paper with you. So something that I didn't know, but like I would definitely advise people to just learn kind of the basic customs in China or in any country.
Yeah, I would also add, depending on the program, for example, if you're, studying abroad with school, or if you're living abroad, like I did after graduation, I just think it's important to do as much research as possible, because you never know, you might know how to do something in the United States and it might be completely different in that country. For example, opening a bank account if you need to do that, or signing a lease, getting an apartment. So yeah, I would just suggest doing as much research as possible on anything you'll need, because it may not be the same, or you might think that it's just a simple thing, and then it'll be much more difficult when you get there.
Good advice. Maliha, do you have anything to add?
So I haven't studied abroad yet, but
But you're preparing to.
Yes, I will be there next semester, I bet you. But I do think that if you are looking for a program, make sure to connect with your program director. Like my program director, me and Ashley, we have the same one. Make sure to show your interest and show that you're passionate about going on this specific program and figuring out why you want to go to this program specifically, like that school.
Great advice. And I also think you should talk to other students who have been to the country or the city where you want to study. You can get a lot of great information about their experience, what they learned, what to bring, things like that. I think other students are great resources. I'm going to go to a question about mistakes or lessons that you learned along the way on your educational journey. So this can be about your language learning journey, or study abroad. It doesn't have to be about one or the other, but it can be about both. So any mistakes or lessons that you learned along the way? Who wants to begin?
Can I go first?
Okay, Maliha.
So I studied French before I studied Korean. I kind of forgot in Korean there's a different alphabet. So when I took my first vocab quiz, I just like didn't realize. I thought that in my head, like in Korean, there's two ways to write it. There's like it's like the same sound but two different like ways to write it. I forgot that spelling mattered in a different language. It's really dumb, but I was like, oh, I can just write however and it's gonna be fine. No, there's like spelling, like there's rules to it. So that was like a very
So pay attention to spelling. Any other good lessons that you've learned along the way? Any cultural lessons, cultural mistakes, faux pas that you've made?
Well, one thing I'd like to say is that for any language, it's pretty easy to forget it if you don't practice it. So for us who aren't in the country we would be in, I think it's kind of right now it takes a lot of like time and effort on my end to continue like immersing myself in the language, whether that be through listening to the music or reading books, watching variety shows. It could be anything. And so I think that's something that I've learned because before I didn't do any of these since I was already in Shanghai. And I feel like I might have taken that for granted. And now I'm like finding different ways, like how can I continue studying and learning the language? So I think definitely practice a lot and take the time and set goals when you're learning a language. It's something that it's very important so you know where you want to be at, what level you want to get.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, I definitely agree with Ashley. I think it's really easy to forget a language if you're not constantly immersed in it and if you're not practicing. And even, going back to my earlier point, if you are studying abroad and if you're in the country, you should take advantage of speaking the language as much as possible. Because, when I was teaching English in France, my job was in English. I spoke to my colleagues in English and I made, English speaking friends. But, it was important for me to learn French. I was there to improve my French. So just, I think a mistake that I made was not seeking out enough opportunities to actively practice French. And another thing I would just say is when you're learning a language, it's okay to make mistakes. I think you making mistakes, and I think a lot of times there's going to be a lot of, things that you get wrong in a language, and some people can get discouraged that way and maybe not want to continue. But I think just part of learning a language is making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. And I think it's a constant, that you're constantly learning, I think, when you're dealing with another language.
I think that's so true. Fergus, did you have something to add?
Since we're talking about missteps, there's a little something. I think you need to be able to remain flexible, even if you think you know something about the country already. My biggest example with this is when you're in Japan, everyone is extremely polite about everything they do. And typically you speak with 4 or 5 feet between you, even before there was COVID and other things. There was a respectful distance. I assumed that would apply everywhere, and I was completely wrong. Because when you get on a train, people are packed like sardines, and they will grab a handrail and force their body into it, no matter who they have to topple over. And it completely, all the politeness, the respect is thrown out the window. And I wound up like waiting in line for a train as several trains went by and people were like mad at me. And I didn't get that I was supposed to stop being polite and just like throw myself onto a crowd. So be ready to react to something that's not what you already know about the country. Because I was not prepared to have to squish myself in the mornings.
Yes, that's a good point. So we might learn or read about some aspect of a culture, but then when we get to that country or that place, we realize that it varies by context, just like it does here in the US. Things are not always the same in every situation and every context. So that's a good story, Fergus.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Yeah, so just back to this like cultural context, definitely be open and I guess just expect the unexpected because there will be like we will if you prepare or you read about the culture beforehand, you'll probably read that things you should and shouldn't do, and then when you get there, just things happen, right? And so like Fergus said, the whole waiting for the train, being polite, that's not necessarily a thing in China. It's just like you shove everyone in and you get on that train and we go. But at the same time, there's no such thing as personal space as there may be here in the United States. And so that's something that I just had to just kind of think about. I was like, okay, I guess I just go for it because no one else is like, they're not going to respect my space. And it's not, and like, they don't mean it in an offensive way. It's just how people go. It's everyone's on the go. So I think definitely be open to the cultural differences that you may encounter once you get to study abroad.
Yes, I think I agree with you. Openness and being flexible and having a sense of humor, because you're going to make mistakes and you're going to embarrass yourself, but just to have the ability to laugh at yourself when you do. So we're getting close to the end of our hour. So I want to have I'm going to ask one more question from the Q&A box, and then we're going to wrap up with some closing remark from each of you. So the last question on the Q&A box is about your language learning. And at what point in your language learning did you feel comfortable relying on your abilities in a job setting? Now, I don't know if any of you have been able to use your language in the job setting, but do you feel like the FLAS Fellowship and your language studies are preparing you for using a language in the job setting? And if so, how?
So I feel prepared. The global studies and FLAS class have helped me to feel prepared if I were to go to another country for any reason of trying to understand how they do business, how to fit in with the culture, how to do the job. In terms of language specifically, if I was going to be hired anywhere in the United States and they were like, it's nice that you know Japanese, I feel comfortable. If I was going to be hired in Asia, I would think they probably have higher expectations for me to speak this language than I have right now. So for most jobs, I think I'm prepared, but I know I'm not ready to like work in the country fluently, although that would be a great way to learn more fast.
That's a good goal to have. You can always, start where you are now in a lower capacity of using that language, but language learning is an ongoing process. So you can always set up a goal to learn more of the language and become fluent enough to work in a job setting. Diana?
Yeah, so I think in terms of feeling comfortable on just relying on my skills, yeah, even though I did work in France after graduating from undergrad, I don't know if I was, comfortable. I just knew that I knew enough French to, be able to live there and get by. And so even though my job was in English, a lot of the administrative things were in French. All the paperwork I had to do, all the day-to-day things were in French. So that actually allowed me to see how much French I knew and how much I was able to use. So, you might surprise yourself. So I don't know if there's an exact indicator of when, now I feel comfortable to do this. I think it might just be a matter of, doing it and seeing how much you know, and you'd probably be surprised.
Great, thank you for that advice. And I think we're going to have to wrap it up for today. I do want to thank all of our panelists for sharing their experiences with us. And I also want to remind the audience that the recording of all of the panel discussions will be made available on the CULTR website after the event. There's also a post-event survey that we'd like you to fill out. So keep the conversation going and share your experiences there. We'd love to hear from you. And join us tomorrow for the National Security Panel from 12 to 1 p.m. And I want to thank everyone so much for joining us today. And please feel free to, I don't know if I can put my email in the text box, but I will, I'm sure my email and the Atlanta Global Studies Center website will be made available to you if you want to know more about the FLAS Fellowship. Thank you so much for joining us and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.